I want to move to the way that maybe most of us might have first heard or seen you.
I know what's coming.
Which is in the band Vertical Horizon, the great Matt Scannell.
He's a tone freak.
Which is funny because when I first learned of him, and I was a huge fan of the band. I watched the music video religiously. Right.
Trying to see, was he playing a Tyler in that one?
I don't think he was in Tyler yet. I think he was like on G&L and stuff like that.
Well, I'll tell you the backstory is he already had a Tyler, but we were in the zone of what company could we pair with to get some free gear, and we would have gotten some instruments, and so we would have gotten a free G&L.
But he already had so I was watching. I'll show you something a little later. But I'd watch live performances and stuff like that. That have happened subsequently, and sometimes some of this would be on certain music channels and stuff like that. And he always had really boutique, especially underground stuff for that era, because there wasn't a lot of ways to find stuff like that. He had to be plugged in to the gear deep state to get into some of the stuff that he had.
I met him in 97, 98, and he was schooling me on I didn't know who Michael Thompson or Michael Landau were. Yeah. And he's he was copying the rig of those guys in the late 90s, which was all message boards and secret societies. There was no way to find it, no pictures really.
He was definitely into it. But the interesting thing is I listened to other Vertical Horizon stuff before that album, and he was definitely more of an acoustic kind of, and even some of the voice scenes when you listen to even I guess the beginning of Everything You Want has some acoustic in it. But even on Best I Ever Had, some of the approaches to stuff just sounds like what you would do on an acoustic guitar, but he's using an electric guitar. And so, it's interesting just to kind of see that transition, because I definitely heard more Dave Matthews-y sort of stuff in the earlier stuff, and then it became more this rock thing.
The full story is, if you pan out, you'll see before he was playing acoustic, he was just wanting to be electric guitar, Eddie Van Halen guy, loved Landau's work and Michael Thompson's work. But then it's so what are your opportunities? You're at college. You don't have...
He went to some Ivy League school, right?
He went to Georgetown. Okay. So you pair up with a guy who's got an acoustic gig at a club every Friday. So Matt goes, I don't do that, but I want to play, and I like this guy and his voice, and I want to get, I was in a band called Toxic Sludge or whatever they were, and I want to do something lighter. So he grabs a Takamine, and the two of them set off for the first time ever for Matt as an acoustic duo. Okay. And then they met up with another group of guys that were a little ahead of them, this group Jacko Pierce, and they modeled themselves after them, and they were tearing it up and down the East Coast back then. There were clubs to play for independent artists, and you could do 1,000 people if you built up a following. So that's what they did. Cut to, they get noticed, they sell thousands of CDs, RCA gives them a record deal, and Matt's like, all right, I'm not doing an acoustic record, I really want to, this is our shot at the majors. I want to write pop songs that have my electric guitar voice. So for him, while it was the first that people would go, hey, 3 records of acoustic stuff and sort of jam bandy. They even had Carter Beauford play on one of their
because Dave Matthews is from Virginia.
Yeah, right? And the same guy, John Alasia, produced, him and his partner Doug Derryberry produced the live record that Vertical Horizon made. They produced the second record they made that had Carter Beauford. So there were 3 records, 2 studio, 1 live, and then it's there's some Dave Matthews adjacent stuff. RCA is where Dave Matthews is. But Matt always knew, it's if I get a shot, I want to be transitioning into pop song, rock guitar stuff. That's where his childhood was. It's you figure out what, as a songwriter, you kind of go on a journey of discovery, and that's what he was doing. But he was I'm not going to get another shot at a first major label record, so I'm not going to just go back into acoustic guitar land. He's I want to grow. And also now it's 98. It's Matchbox 20 had hit. Third Eye Blind was big. Fuel, all the bands. So it was he was, his voice on the electric guitar was in a sweet spot for like, you can totally do this. It's post-alternative. Things had gotten a little slicker. So if you wrote a great pop song but had the guitar band kind of outer shell, you could really work. And it did for us.
Yeah. So how did you get called into the band?
It was exactly what I wrote down on my vision board or my dream board or whatever thing I was writing on to conjure up my path to success. I was living at home in Pittsfield, Mass. I had gone to Berkeley, and then I'd gotten a touring gig with Arlo Guthrie. So I moved back home. And then after a couple of years of that, I was like, what am I doing here? I was getting ancient at 24, still living back in my hometown. So I moved back to Boston, and I wanted to work. So I started playing with some blues bands, but I was 24, 25. So I'm working. When I would run into other young musicians, I would be like, hey, where are the gigs at for money? But also, if there are any indie bands or any pop bands looking for players, like that's what I'd love to do both. I'd love to make money and also not make money by joining an original band, because those were the two options. You either play covers and get paid or play in an original band and, try to get a record deal. Cut to one of the guys I was playing with in the blues scene was like, hey, there's a guy from Worcester, Mass, Matt Scannell. His band just got a record deal and their bass player quit. And it was like, that stuff never happens. I was like, there's no way a guy from Worcester got a record deal for one, but also there's no way that they got a record deal and then the bass player quits. That's the dumbest thing you could do. But sure enough, that was true. So they were auditioning bass players in the basement of Matt's mom's house. So it feels very small time, but also it's like I worked with one guy who had been dropped by a label. So I had never had a chance to like, what does it mean to be with someone with a record deal? It means we're all going to buy $1 million mansions like next week, right? So I just learned the songs, hightailed it. I had to borrow a bass because I talked to them, set up the audition. They're like, to be in the band, we're using 5-string range. And I was like, I'm totally up for it. I don't have one, but I'll borrow one from my friend Bobby, the Bobby Keys guitar player guy. He had a Fender 5-string. And they also tuned down a half step. So it's like I had to commit to, like, I'm going to learn these songs on this particular instrument, tune down a half step. So when we say E, it's really E flat, the Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan thing. Even David Ryan Harris does that. And then I went in, I was the first guy to audition. And like, we really hit it off. I'm personable. I was more so back then, possibly. And they're super nice. It's like, typically a band is a family, so they lost a family member. It's like, well, whatever didn't fit with him, we want to make sure we pick the right guy. Yeah. So I came in, it's like, oh, you're great. I played great. They liked my gear, even though it wasn't my bass. I'm like, I'll be buying either a Sadowski or a Lakeland. I just gotta join the band and make some money. I was figuring out it's when you're young, they understood. They're like, oh yeah, the last bass player we had to loan him money to buy a 5-string. Like nobody had money for the right gear yet. And because I was the first guy, I was like, this is great, but we're going to wait and see everybody and then we'll let you know. So it might have taken a week or so or 2 weeks before it was like, hey, we've seen everybody. And wouldn't you know, their favorite guy was me. So they called me up and asked me to join. And that meant, it's nothing changed overnight, but there were a couple gigs. There was picking a producer, going into the studio. We went to Bearsville where the band recorded, Jeff Buckley recorded. We were finally engaging into the world of you are on a label, you're working with a producer, and whatever they need you to do, and they're, kind of talking to me directly, like, do whatever they ask. Like, the other bass player, when the producer or the A&R guy who was doing some demo work with them, when they asked him to play with a pick, he said it wasn't really his thing. And so that was told to me, like, don't pull that shit, kid. So consequently, Matt had done all these demos and he had just played some simple bass with a pick. So I'm like, I'll do what you have there because it works and that's what you like. And the producer liked it, and we were recording at Bearsville. We carved out all the tracks. We did all this stuff and mixed the record. And then the drummer, Ed Toth, who now plays with the Doobie Brothers and has for like 20 years, he said, this record sounds a little bit, something stiff about it. It doesn't seem like us. And he had been in the band for a number of years, played tons of gigs, been with the transition from acoustic to electric. And he was sensing that there wasn't enough hips to it. And so they got a different producer, Mark Ender, brought him in, and we recut a lot of stuff with bass and drums. And one of the things that we recut was Everything You Want. And we did it I agree it sounds a little bit stiff, a little bit lifeless. Let me try my thing as if I had a thing at 25. And that's what became the song, and that was a genuine number one song. So that was one of the first if I like it, maybe I'm not so crazy.
And they had a couple number ones, right? You're a God was also
that was there, and Best I Ever Had, and then a country artist.
I always thought they were like on two different records because there was a lot of space that they did between those singles.
It's because back in the old days, you wrote a single that was a hit to death. And because we were a new band, we put out the record in September of 99. We didn't have a number one hit with Everything You Want until June of 2000. So that was almost a year later. And then it's like, it was a big song in that summer. So then we rode that until we put out the next single. So it was probably a 2-year campaign. Yeah, because we didn't come off the road until September of 2001.
Wow.
So, but people don't do that anymore. But that's what we were going to every radio station. It was like a campaign to when you're a new band trying to break a single. It's not the same as a big artist coming in and going, "Hey, everybody, I got a new single." And everyone goes, "All right, great." We started, okay, Atlanta is playing your song. All right, there's a guy in Chicago that wants to play it. Let's go up and do that shake and, meet and greet and do all that. Okay, then we got to go. It was forever till we made it to the West Coast. Like, you're campaigning bit by bit. Everything was more regional back then. So that was one of the learning curves. But the biggest one for me was following directions. Like, hey, songwriter, band leader says, on my demo, I played with a pick, basically half notes. And, there's 2 chords every bar. So just do that. And then you do pedal eighths in the chorus. And that was what was happening. It worked for him. Producer okays it. It's only when the second producer comes in and is like, is the song all it can be? Guitars are good. Drums are good. What's missing? There's no groove in the bass. And then I said, well, I remember talking to the producer. I was like, well, I just played what was on Matt's demo, but if you threw it at me and said, do your thing, I would do something like this. I was into Michel Ndegeocello. I was into, Motown stuff. I listened to What's Going On all the time. I was into Willie Weeks. I just didn't have that opportunity to bop in Vertical Horizon because it wasn't, that genre didn't, it hadn't quite opened up. They hadn't quite gotten enough, soul things to come into. Rock was very like, if you didn't swing in rock, you didn't groove, you didn't we all loved D'Angelo, but it wasn't like, okay, we're going to do that within this thing. So for me, getting to be a little bit more, because I went right from Vertical Horizon to Robin. Like, we put out our record in 99, June of 99, and in September of 99, I was working with Robin. So I was experiencing all the genres that I really loved. So I was trying to get some of that in Vertical Horizon, and Everything You Want was the big one where, like, when I just was myself and kind of bopped with it in a way that fit that song and that genre, it really solidified my place in, like, okay, we can trust you with the bass chair to like, you're going to make the song better than the songwriter who's envisioning it as a complete piece of work. I actually make it better, and that's cool. And then that makes you want to, like, well, let's do more together.
Do you mind if we swap it out and let's hear it?
Yeah. Roll it, Mikey.
Got it. it's already coming in. Oh, and it's rising at the back of your mind. You never could get it unless you were fed it. Now you're here and you don't know why. But under skinnies and the skid marks past the places where